The cadets laughed at the weapon she carried, a relic from a forgotten Earth, but the instructor's whisper cut through the mockery. That rifle can strike from continents away. In that moment, the laughter died, replaced by awe. For in the hands of a human, even the oldest weapon becomes a legend. The mockery at Nexus Military Academy, the morning sun of Arcos Prime, cast long shadows across the Nexus. Military Academy's central courtyard, where 200 cadets from 47 different species stood in formation. The air hummed with translated conversations, a symphony of clicks, whistles, and modulated tones processed through universal communication devices. Among the sea of exotic physiologies and vibrant alien features stood Sergeant Maya Chen, appearing roughly ordinary at her standard Earth military fatigues. Maya adjusted the strap of the long case slung across her back, aware of the curious glances directed her way. At 26 standard Earth years, she was neither the youngest nor the oldest cadet present. But she was certainly the most human, being one of only 3 representatives of her species at the Academy this cycle. The Nexus Military Academy represented the pinnacle of Galactic Coalition military training, where the finest warriors from across known space came to learn advanced combat doctrines and forge alliances that would shape interstellar security for generations. The Academy's main training complex sprawled across 12 square kilometers of carefully maintained terrain, featuring everything from zero-gravity combat simulators to atmospheric warfare ranges. Today's gathering focused on the traditional weapons selection ceremony, where each cadet would present their chosen primary armament for instructor evaluation and peer review. It was equal parts practical assessment and cultural exchange, allowing species to showcase their military heritage and technological capabilities. Commander Thax, a towering Velshir with skin that shifted between deep purple and blue depending on his mood, stood at the podium calling cadets forward one by one. The Velshir were known for their ability to manipulate electromagnetic fields, making them naturally suited for energy weapon systems. As each cadet presented their weapon, holographic displays projected technical specifications for all to observe. This area named Krell stepped forward, his crystalline exoskeleton refracting the sunlight into rainbow patterns across the courtyard. He presented a plasma lance capable of superheating gases to millions of degrees within milliseconds, with an effective engagement range of 7,000 meters. The assembled cadets murmured approval, and several instructors nodded appreciatively at the weapon's elegant design. Next came Voronvex, twin Korvax warriors whose 4 arms allowed them to wield dual graviton disruptors simultaneously. These weapons manipulated localized gravity fields to crush or deflect targets, effective to 8,000 meters with minimal energy signature. Their demonstration drew applause from the crowd, and even some of the normally stoic instructors seemed impressed. The pattern continued. Each species presented weapons that represented centuries or millennia of technological advancement. Quantum phase rifles that shifted matter between dimensional states, molecular disruption beams that unraveled atomic bonds, directed energy weapons that rode laser pathways to deliver devastating plasma payloads. Every presentation showcased the cutting edge of galactic military science. When Commander Thax called Maya's name, she walked forward with steady confidence, her boots clicking against the polished stone courtyard. She unslung the case from her back and laid it carefully on the presentation table. The case itself drew attention. Constructed from worn ballistic polymer rather than the sleek exotic materials favored by other species, it looked old, used, and decidedly primitive. Maya opened the case with deliberate care, revealing the weapon nested inside custom-cut foam padding. The rifle was just over a meter in length, constructed primarily from treated steel alloys and composite materials. Unlike the glowing, humming energy weapons presented by other cadets, Maya's rifle was silent and dark, its matte black finish absorbing light rather than reflecting it. "Bis," Maya announced clearly, her voice carrying across the suddenly quiet courtyard. is a modified M2010 enhanced battle rifle. Earth designation code Peacekeeper. It fires solid projectiles using chemical propellant, with effective engagement capabilities determined by shooter skill, environmental conditions, and ammunition selection. The silence lasted approximately 3 seconds before the laughter began. It started as scattered chuckling from a group of Cytherian cadets, then spread like a wave across the formation. Even some of the normally disciplined warriors couldn't suppress their amusement. Chemical propellant. Krell's crystalline voice rang with disbelief, his body shifting to a shade that indicated confusion among his species. He'd brought a gunpowder weapon to an advanced military academy? A Volshire cadet named Shen spoke up, her skin flashing orange with amusement. My ancestors used energy weapons 3,000 years ago. This looks like something from a historical museum display. Vor, one of the Korvax twins, gestured with 2 of his forearms in a motion that conveyed polite skepticism. With respect, Sergeant Chan, what is the effective range of this weapon? Our standard issue disruptors engage accurately to 8,000 meters. Surely your projectile weapon cannot compete with modern energy-based systems. Maya met his gaze without flinching, her expression neutral. The effective range depends on several factors. Under optimal conditions with proper ammunition and environmental calculation, engagements have been successfully completed at ranges exceeding 85 kilometers. The laughter died instantly, replaced by confused murmuring. Several cadets checked their translation devices, certain they had misheard. 85 kilometers was beyond the effective range of most ship-mounted weapons, let alone personal armaments. That's impossible, Shen stated flatly, her skin now shifting to a doubtful gray. At that distance, atmospheric interference alone would render any ballistic projectile useless. Gravitational drop, wind variance, air density fluctuations. The computational requirements for such a shot would require shipboard targeting systems. Maya simply nodded, acknowledging the criticism without defending herself. She had learned during her first weeks at the academy that humans were generally regarded as curiosities, a species that had somehow stumbled into spacefaring capability despite their persistent reliance on what most considered obsolete technologies. Let them doubt. She would prove herself when it mattered. Chief Instructor Varn stepped forward, his presence commanding immediate silence. The Korvax veteran carried himself with the bearing of someone who had seen actual combat, not just training simulations. His forearms bore scars that no medical technology had fully erased, marks he kept as reminders of battles fought and lessons learned. His eyes, all 6 of them, focused on Maya's rifle with an intensity that made several nearby cadets step back instinctively. Sergeant Chun, Barnes' voice rumbled like distant thunder. Tomorrow we conduct live fire. Evaluations on the Saros range. You will have opportunity to demonstrate your weapons. Capabilities under observed conditions. He paused, and something flickered in his expression that Maya couldn't quite read. I recommend you bring adequate ammunition and whatever calculation tools you require. Yes, sir, Maya responded crisply. I'll be ready. As the ceremony continued with remaining cadets presenting their weapons, Mia carefully secured her rifle back in its case. She caught Varn watching her again, and this time she recognized the expression. It wasn't doubt or skepticism. It was recognition. Somehow, the old Korvax warrior knew something about human weapons that the other instructors and cadets did not. That evening in the cadet quarters, Maya sat on her bunk cleaning her rifle with practice motions, running a bore brush through the barrel and checking the mechanical components that her fellow cadets found so primitive. Through the window, she could see Arcos Prime's 3 moons rising over the training complex, and somewhere beyond them, countless stars that included her own sun. Tomorrow, she would show them what human ingenuity really meant. Tomorrow, they would learn that sometimes the oldest solutions were the deadliest ones, and that humanity hadn't survived and thrived by following everyone else's path, but by perfecting their own. The impossible demonstration, the Saros Range, stretched across a vast expanse of desert terrain that seemed to extend forever in every direction. The Academy had chosen this location specifically for its minimal atmospheric interference and flat geography, making it ideal for testing long-range weapon systems. Massive holographic markers floated at intervals, designating target zones at 1 kilometer, 3 kilometers, 5 kilometers, and 8 kilometers. Beyond that, the desert simply vanished into heat, shimmer, and distance. Maya arrived at the firing line before dawn, wanting time to assess conditions before the official evaluation began. She carried her rifle case, a weathered backpack containing ammunition and tools, and a small handheld device that looked ancient compared to the sleek sensor equipment used by other cadets. The device was a Kestrel weather meter, standard issue for Earth military snipers for over a century. It measured wind speed, temperature, humidity, and barometric pressure through simple physical sensors rather than complex electronic arrays. By the time other cadets began arriving, Maya had already completed her preliminary environmental assessment. Wind was steady at 4 meters per second from the northeast. Temperature would rise significantly once the sun cleared the horizon, creating thermal currents that would affect projectile trajectory. Humidity was low at 18%. Barometric pressure held steady. All factors that would need to be calculated and compensated for. Commander Thax arrived with the evaluation board, accompanied by Chief Instructor Varn and several other senior academy staff. The cadets assembled in designated observation areas, their various species creating a colorful array of forms and features against the pale desert sand. Holographic displays activated, showing real-time sensor feeds and targeting data that would record each weapon's performance. Cadets will demonstrate their weapons in order of presentation from yesterday's ceremony, Thax announced, his Velshire skin shifting to an authoritative deep blue. Each cadet will engage targets at maximum effective range for their chosen armament. Accuracy, target elimination efficiency, and tactical application will be evaluated. Krell stepped forward first, his crystalline form glittering in the early morning light. He raised his plasma lance, and the weapon hummed to life with a sound like singing glass. The targeting computer built into his exoskeleton linked with the weapon's firing system. Calculations processed in milliseconds. He fired at a target 7,000 meters downrange. The plasma bolt streaked across the desert, superheated air creating a visible trail. The target exploded in a satisfying fireball 3 seconds later. The evaluators nodded approval, and Krell's scores appeared on the holographic displays. Accuracy rated at 94% for range and conditions. Target elimination was total. Energy efficiency was excellent. It was an impressive demonstration that set a high standard for those who followed. The Korvax twins went next, their graviton disruptors creating localized distortions in spacetime itself. They engaged targets at 8,000 meters, and the weapons performed flawlessly. Invisible gravitational forces crushed their targets into compacted spheres of twisted metal and composite materials. The evaluation board awarded them scores even higher than Krell's. One by one, cadets demonstrated their weapons. Molecular disruptors that unraveled targets at the atomic level. Quantum phase rifles that shifted matter between dimensions. Directed energy weapons that seemed to reach out and touch targets with fingers of pure destruction. Each demonstration was recorded, analyzed, and scored by the increasingly impressed evaluation board. Finally, Commander Thax called Maya's name. She walked to the firing line carrying her rifle and equipment with the same steady confidence she had shown the previous day. The whispers started immediately as other cadets noticed she wasn't connecting to the academies, targeting network, or accessing any of the sophisticated sensor systems. Available. Maya set down her backpack and began unpacking items that drew curious stares. A mechanical tripod with adjustable legs, a shooting mat made from simple fabric, a notebook with actual paper pages and a pencil for making calculations, the Kestrel weather meter, binoculars for visual observation, and finally several boxes of ammunition, each cartridge precisely machined and loaded to exacting specifications. Sergeant Chun, Commander Thax's voice carried a note of confusion. You are aware that Academy sensor systems and targeting computers are available for your use? Yes, sir, Maya replied calmly, setting up her tripod and adjusting the legs to achieve perfect stability. I prefer to use my own equipment and calculations. It's more reliable for this weapon system. Several cadets laughed at that statement. The idea that manual calculations could be more reliable than sophisticated targeting computers seemed absurd to species who had used such technology for millennia. Positioned her shooting mat on the ground and lay prone behind her rifle, settling into a position that immediately telegraphed extensive training and experience. She deployed the rifle's bipod, adjusting height until the weapon sat perfectly level. Then she removed a small brass device from her pack, a bubble level, and used it to verify her setup with mechanical precision. What range would you like to engage, Sergeant? Varn asked, and there was something in his tone that silenced the mocking whispers. Maya raised her binoculars and scanned the desert downrange, far beyond the designated target zones past where the holographic markers ended. She spotted a rock formation rising from the desert floor. She consulted her rangefinder, another simple mechanical device that used trigonometry rather than laser measurement. 85 kilometers, Maya stated clearly. That rock formation. Northern face, approximately 3 meters from the top. The silence was absolute. Even the wind seemed to pause. Commander Thax checked his own sensors, confirming their distance. Sergeant Chun, that target is beyond visual range for most species. It is certainly beyond the effective range of any personal weapon system we have on record. Perhaps you would prefer to engage one of the designated targets at a more reasonable distance. With respect, sir, I was told to demonstrate my weapon's capabilities at maximum effective range. 85 kilometers is well within capability for this system under current conditions. Shen, the Velshire cadet, spoke up from the observation area. This is ridiculous. Even if she could see that far, which is doubtful, atmospheric interference over that distance would scatter any projectile. The gravitational drop alone would be 47.3 meters? Maya interrupted without looking up from her setup. Accounting for air density, temperature gradient, and Coriolis effect at this latitude, total bullet drop will be approximately 47.3 meters. Windage adjustment required is 2.7 meters left to compensate for crosswind. Time of flight will be approximately 6.4 seconds. She opened her notebook and began writing calculations by hand, numbers and formulas that represented centuries of human ballistic science. Muzzle velocity of the custom-loaded ammunition. Ballistic coefficient of the aerodynamic projectile. Spin drift from the rifle's barrel twist rate. Every variable that would affect the bullet's flight across 85 kilometers of atmosphere. Varn moved closer, watching Maya work with those 6 eyes that missed nothing. You calculated all of that without computer assistance? Yes, sir. It's basic physics and mathematics. Human snipers have been making these calculations for centuries. We had to learn because we didn't have access to your species' advanced technology. We developed alternative methods that worked just as effectively. Maya finished her calculations and checked them twice, running through the mathematics again to verify accuracy. Then she made minute adjustments to her rifle scope, mechanical clicks as she dialed in elevation and windage corrections. Each click represented a precise angular change, ancient mechanical engineering that remained reliable when electronic systems failed. She settled behind the rifle, cheek pressed against the stock, eye aligned with the scope. Her breathing slowed, becoming deep and rhythmic. Her heart rate decreased, pulse steadying to a measured cadence. This was the zone, the state of absolute focus that human marksmen had cultivated for generations. The desert fell silent. 200 cadets from 47 species watched a human woman prepare to attempt something their advanced technology considered impossible. Maya's finger touched the trigger. Applying pressure with surgical precision, the rifle discharged with a sharp crack that echoed across the desert, a sound entirely different from the hums and pulses of energy weapons. The recoil pushed against her shoulder, but her body absorbed it through practiced technique. A small amount of smoke drifted from the barrel, chemical combustion residue that seemed impossibly primitive. Then everyone waited. At 85 kilometers, the projectile would take over 6 seconds to reach its target. 6 seconds of ballistic flight across a distance that most species couldn't effectively see without technological enhancement. 6 seconds where a small piece of machine metal traveled through atmosphere, fighting wind and gravity and physics itself, following a path calculated by human mathematics and human intuition, the rock formation, barely visible as a dark smudge against the horizon, suddenly erupted in a small explosion of dust and fragmented stone. The sensors confirmed impact location. Northern face, 2.8 meters from the top, 0.2 meters from me is called shot. At 85 kilometers, Chief Instructor Varn stepped forward, his forearms hanging motionless at his sides. When he spoke, his voice carried clearly across the suddenly silent range. That weapon doesn't just kill at distance, he said, looking at Maya with something that might have been respect or might have been fear. It rewrites the meaning of distance itself. He turned to address the assembled cadets, his 6 eyes sweeping across species who had suddenly realized they had drastically underestimated human capability. What you just witnessed represents something unique in galactic military history. Most species developed energy weapons because they solved the problems of atmospheric interference and projectile drop through technology. Humans couldn't do that initially, so they learned to master those problems through pure skill and understanding. They turned limitations into advantages. Barn pulled up historical data on the holographic displays, files that had been classified until recently. Human military records document successful engagements at ranges exceeding 120 kilometers using weapons similar to what Sergeant Chun demonstrated today. Not ship-mounted systems. Not artillery. Personal weapons operated by individual soldiers who calculated trajectories by hand and learned to be patient enough to wait for perfect conditions. Krell's crystalline form had shifted to a shade indicating deep thought among his species. But why develop such capabilities? Why not simply advance to energy weapons like every other species? Maya secured her rifle and stood, brushing desert sand from her uniform. Because humans spent thousands of years fighting each other before we reached space. We didn't have energy weapons or graviton disruptors. We had chemistry and mathematics and determination. We learned to make every shot count because ammunition was limited. We learned to engage from distances where enemies couldn't return fire because we were usually outnumbered. We learned patience because sometimes that one perfect shot meant the difference between survival and extinction. She gestured at the distant rock formation, still barely visible on the horizon. You see limitations? We see solutions? Your energy weapons are powerful and impressive, but they create signatures that can be detected. They require power cells that can be depleted. They depend on technology that can malfunction or be jammed. A kinetic projectile is just physics. It works in any environment, under any conditions, regardless of sensor countermeasures. Vor, one of the Korvax twins, spoke with genuine curiosity rather than mockery. How long did it take you to learn these skills? I've been training since I was 12 years old. 14 years of practice, study, and refinement. But humans have been developing these techniques for centuries. Every generation builds on the knowledge of those before them. What I demonstrated today represents accumulated wisdom from thousands of marksmen who each contributed small improvements to our collective understanding. Commander. Dax studied the evaluation data with expressions that cycled through confusion, disbelief, and finally grudging acceptance. Sergeant Chun, your accuracy rating at 85 kilometers exceeds the statistical accuracy of most ship-mounted targeting systems. This is unprecedented for a personal weapon. With respect, sir, it's only unprecedented for non-human militaries. For Earth's Special Operations Forces, this is standard capability. We have soldiers who could exceed what I demonstrated today given proper equipment and conditions. The implications settled over the assembled cadets like a heavy blanket. They had laughed at primitive technology, at chemical propellants and mechanical calculations. They had assumed that newer meant better, that advanced technology automatically conferred superiority. Maya had just shattered those assumptions with a weapon system that predated most species' industrial revolutions. Varn approached Maya, his scarred arms moving in a gesture of profound respect among his species. Your scores are the highest recorded in this academy's 300-year history, not just for today's evaluation, but across all metrics for personal weapon proficiency. Mia accepted the compliment with a simple nod. She had not come here to prove humans were superior. She had come to learn from other species while sharing her own culture's strengths, if that meant demonstrating capabilities others found surprising. So be it dot as the cadets dispersed to prepare for the next phase of evaluations. Mia began the careful process of cleaning her rifle. The barrel would need attention after that shot, and the mechanical components required maintenance that couldn't be neglected. Around her, conversations buzzed with new respect and numerous questions about human military doctrine. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities to learn. But today Maya had accomplished something important. She had shown the galaxy that humanity belonged among the stars, not despite their primitive technology, but because they had mastered fundamentals that others had forgotten. The sun climbed higher over the Saros range, and somewhere in the distance, a small piece of copper and lead rested embedded in ancient stone, a monument to human persistence and the deadly art of patience. Respect, earned in lessons learned in the Academy's central briefing hall, had never been so packed. Word of Mia's demonstration had spread through the cadet population like wildfire, and now nearly every student in half the instructional staff had gathered for what Commander Thax had announced as a special tactical doctrine presentation. The amphitheater-style room could accommodate 500 beings comfortably, but today it held closer to 700, with cadets from various species, crowding into aisles and standing against walls. Maya sat in the front row alongside other distinguished cadets, trying to ignore the weight of hundreds of eyes upon her. Chief Instructor Varn stood at the podium, his four arms working various holographic controls to bring up classified files that flickered into assembly. The security clearance warnings that flashed briefly indicated these documents had been sealed until very recently. Yesterday's weapons evaluation produced results that warrant deeper examination. Varn began, his rumbling voice filling the space. Specifically, it revealed gaps in our collective understanding of human military capabilities. With authorization from Coalition Command and cooperation from Earth's Military Liaison Office, I have been granted permission to share information that will fundamentally alter your perception of humanity's place in galactic security. The holographic display shifted to show a timeline of human military history, stretching back thousands of years. Unlike other species whose military evolution showed steady progression from primitive melee weapons to advanced energy systems, humanity's timeline revealed something different. An obsessive, relentless refinement of kinetic projectile technology across millennia. Most species, Varn continued, gesturing at the display with two of his arms, developed energy weapons within centuries of achieving industrial capability. It was the logical progression: more power, less mass, greater efficiency. Humanity took a different path, not by choice initially, but by necessity. They refined kinetic weapons to levels we considered impossible because they had no alternative. The display zoomed in on a specific period labeled 21st Century Earth and showed footage that made several cadets lean forward in their seats. Humans in various environments, deserts, mountains, urban ruins engaging targets at distances that the sensors struggled to calculate. Confirmed engagement. Afghanistan theater, Earth year 2009, distance 2,475 meters. Single shooter, single projectile, chemical propellant weapon, target eliminated. Varn let that information settle before continuing. This was not considered exceptional by human standards. It was routine military operation. Krell's crystalline voice rang out from the audience. Instructor, with respect, 2,000 meters is impressive, but not beyond our current capabilities. Yesterday, Sergeant Chen engaged at 85 kilometers. That is more than 30 times that distance. Correct, Varn acknowledged. I am building context. Understanding where humanity started helps explain where they are now. He advanced the display to show another engagement. Earth Year 2017, Iraq Theater. Confirmed engagement at 3,540 meters. The shooter maintained position for 48 hours, waiting for ideal conditions. 48 hours of absolute stillness, exposed to hostile environment, for one shot. Shen's skin flickered between colors, indicating confusion. 48 hours. Why not use orbital support or artillery? Why risk an individual soldier for so long? Maya spoke from her seat, her voice carrying clearly in the acoustically optimized hall. Because artillery announces your presence to every enemy within 50 kilometers. Orbital strikes require fleet assets and create signatures that can be detected across star systems. One patient human with a rifle can eliminate a high-value target without anyone knowing where the shot came from, or even that it was a deliberate attack rather than accident or equipment failure. Varn nodded approvingly. Precisely. Humanity developed what they call asymmetric warfare to an art form. They learned to fight opponents with superior numbers or technology by being patient, precise, and completely invisible until the moment of engagement. The display shifted again, showing more recent footage from humanity's early space expansion period. After first contact with galactic civilization, human military observers studied our weapons and tactics extensively. They noted that all species relied heavily on sensor networks, energy signatures, and computational targeting. They identified this as a potential vulnerability. Ver's forearms moved in the Korvax gesture for strategic insight. They realized that everyone was optimizing for the same battlefield assumptions. Humans could gain advantage by using methods that fell outside those assumptions. Exactly, Varn confirmed. While other species were advancing energy weapon efficiency by 2 or 3% annually, humans were perfecting kinetic systems that our sensors were never designed to detect. They turned their technological limitations into tactical advantages. The display now showed a classified document with Earth military seals. This file was declassified specifically for this presentation. It documents humanity's longest confirmed engagement using personal weapons. The distance is redacted for security reasons, but I can tell you it exceeds 120 kilometers. The target was eliminated with single-shot accuracy, under combat conditions with hostile counter-sniper elements actively hunting the shooter. The hall erupted in murmurs and exclamations across multiple languages and communication methods. 120 kilometers was beyond the effective range of most ship-mounted point defense weapons. The idea that an individual soldier could engage at such distances using equipment that massed than 10 kilograms seemed to violate fundamental principles of military science. Commander Thax stood, his Velshire skin shifting to colors, indicating he was about to ask something important. Chief Instructor, how do humans defend against such tactics? If their own soldiers possessed these capabilities, surely they have developed countermeasures. Varn's expression, or the closest equivalent a Korvax could manage, was grim. That is perhaps the most disturbing aspect of human military doctrine. They defend by assuming they are always under observation from distances they cannot detect. Their military installations are designed with the assumption that enemy snipers might be positioned anywhere within 200 kilometers. They conduct operations under the premise that any exposed personnel could be engaged at any moment from any direction. He pulled up tactical diagrams showing human military base layouts. Notice the complete absence of straight pathways longer than 100 meters. Notice that all critical facilities are either underground or protected by multiple layers of offset barriers. Notice that personnel movement between buildings follows random patterns rather than direct routes. They have built their entire defensive philosophy around an enemy that fights exactly as they do. Maya felt the weight of attention shift back to her. A young Volshire cadet in the middle rows raised a hand tentatively. Sergeant Chan, if I may ask, this sounds like it requires enormous patience and mental discipline. How do humans train for this? Is it genetic capability or learned skill? Maya stood to address the question properly, aware that her answer would be recorded and analyzed by military strategists across the coalition. It is learned skill built upon evolutionary foundation. Humans evolved as persistent hunters, meaning our ancestors survived by tracking prey across vast distances over extended time periods. We did not have the speed of predators or the strength of larger animals. What we had was endurance and the ability to focus on a goal across days or weeks of pursuit. She gestured to the holographic displays showing human engagements. That same mental architecture that allowed our ancestors to track an antelope for 3 days across African plains now allows modern soldiers to maintain operational focus across similar timescales. We train from childhood in activities that develop patience and precision, sports that require hitting small targets at distance, hunting that teaches environmental awareness and stillness, competitive shooting that demands absolute concentration. But the mathematics? Krell interjected, his crystalline form refracting light in patterns indicating intense curiosity. The calculations you performed yesterday, wind compensation, gravitational drop, atmospheric conditions, surely those require computational assistance? They require understanding of physics and practice applying it, Maya corrected gently. Every human sniper learns the same fundamental equations. We drill them until the calculations become intuitive. Given wind speed, distance, temperature, and a few other variables, an experienced marksman can estimate required corrections in seconds. The mathematics is not complex, it is merely applied consistently under pressure. Varn advanced the presentation to show training footage from Earth military sniper schools. Human sniper training lasts 6 months minimum, often longer. Candidates are tested not just on marksmanship but on patience, decision-making under stress, and ability to remain undetected in hostile territory. Failure rates exceed 70%. Those who succeed represent the most disciplined soldiers humanity produces. The footage showed human students lying motionless in various environments for hours, waiting for single-shot opportunities. It showed them performing complex calculations with minimal equipment. It showed them moving with such careful precision that even advanced sensors struggled to detect their presence. What you are observing, Varn explained, is not just weapons training. It is a complete tactical philosophy that assumes conflict will be decided by patience and precision rather than overwhelming firepower. Humans do not fight battles they cannot win. They eliminate key targets and withdraw before anyone realizes they were there. They control territory without occupying it by making movement through that territory impossibly dangerous. Shen stood, her skin cycling through colors that indicated she was processing difficult concepts. Instructor, this creates problematic strategic implications. If humans can engage at these distances with minimal signature, how does anyone conduct military operations in regions where human forces might be present? That, Varn said quietly, is precisely the question that Coalition Command wrestled with when humanity applied for military membership. The conclusion was that it is better to have humans as allies than as potential adversaries. Their capabilities fundamentally change battlefield calculations in ways we are still working to understand. He pulled up a star map showing recent Coalition military operations. In the past 5 years since humanity joined, human forces have participated in 17 peacekeeping operations and border security actions. In every case, their presence reduced overall casualties by 70 to 90%. Not because they engaged in heavy combat, But because potential adversaries knew human snipers were present somewhere in the operational area, the psychological impact of facing an enemy you cannot see or detect has proven more effective than actual engagement. Mia listened to this analysis of her species' military contributions with mixed feelings. Pride in human effectiveness, certainly, but also awareness that their methods were fundamentally different from how other species approached conflict. Where others saw war as clash of armies, humans saw it as elimination of key individuals who made armies function. Commander, Dax addressed the assembly with formal gravity. Based on analysis of Sergeant Chen's demonstration and review of human military doctrine, the Coalition Training Command has authorized integration of human long-range kinetic doctrine into Academy curriculum. Selected cadets from all species will receive basic instruction in human marksmanship principles, not to become snipers themselves, but to understand tactics they may encounter or coordinate with in combined operations. A Korvax cadet near the back raised one of his forearms. Will this training include the patience disciplines? The ability to remain focused across extended time periods? Modified versions appropriate to each species' psychology? Dax confirmed. We cannot replicate millions of years of human evolutionary development, but we can teach the fundamental principles they have refined. Understanding wind effects, ballistic trajectories, environmental factors. These are universal physics that any species can learn. Krell stood, his crystalline form now glowing with the color his species used to indicate respect and formal acknowledgement. Sergeant Chun, I owe you an apology. I laughed at your weapon because I did not understand what it represented. I saw a primitive technology and assumed inferiority. That was failure of imagination on my part. Maya appreciated the sentiment even as she felt uncomfortable with the attention. Your reaction was reasonable based on available information. Most species develop differently than humans did. Different does not mean better or worse, just different. We can learn from each other. Perhaps, Krell agreed, but what you demonstrated yesterday was not just different approach. It was mastery of fundamentals at level that makes advanced technology seem unnecessary. That is worthy of respect regardless of species or background. Other cadets voiced similar sentiments, and Maya realized the mockery of 2 days ago had transformed into genuine curiosity and respect. They no longer saw her rifle as primitive artifact, but as refined tool, represent centuries of accumulated human expertise. Varn concluded the presentation by opening the floor for questions, and the next 2 hours dissolved into detailed discussion of human tactics, training methodologies, and strategic philosophy. Maya found herself explaining concepts she had taken for granted her entire life, how patience was taught, how environmental awareness was developed, how the mental discipline required for long-range engagement was cultivated through years of progressive training. As the session finally ended and cadets dispersed to their next obligations, Maya gathered her materials and prepared to leave. Varn intercepted her at the exit, his 6 eyes studying her with that same intensity she had noticed during the weapons demonstration. You handled that well, he said simply. Not easy being suddenly made representative of your entire species' military capabilities. I just showed them what any properly trained human marksman could do, Maya replied. I am not exceptional by our standards. That, Varn said, is precisely what makes your species so formidable. What you consider routine, we consider extraordinary. The gap between those perspectives represents significant strategic advantage. He paused, then continued more quietly. I fought humans once before coalition integration. Border skirmish, minor conflict over resource rights and disputed system. We had superior numbers, better technology, overwhelming tactical advantage on paper. Maya waited, sensing he needed to share this. We never saw them, Varn continued, his voice distant with memory. Never detected their presence. Just critical systems failures, command personnel casualties, supply depot explosions that look like accidents. Over 3 weeks, our operational capability degraded from complete superiority to untenable position. We withdrew without ever engaging human forces directly. Later, intelligence suggested perhaps dozen human soldiers had been responsible for entire campaign. He focused back on Maya, and his expression held something between respect and residual fear. That is when I understood humanity was different. You do not conquer territory, you make territory unconquerable by anyone else. You do not win battles. You make battles irrelevant by eliminating enemy capability before conflict begins. It is terrifying and brilliant in equal measure. Maya considered her response carefully. We learned those methods because we had to. Human history is a long story of smaller groups defeating larger ones through innovation and patience. We brought those lessons to stars with us. And the galaxy is still adjusting to implications, Varn agreed. But adjustment will happen. Already, I see cadets thinking differently about combat doctrine. Your demonstration planted seeds that will grow into new tactical understanding across coalition forces. As Mia walked back to her quarters through the Academy's manicured grounds, she reflected on the past 3 days. She had arrived expecting to learn from advanced alien civilizations. Instead, she had taught them that advancement was not linear, that sometimes the old ways remain valid, and that humanity's long struggle on Earth had prepared them uniquely for challenges among the stars. That evening, she sat on her bunk cleaning her rifle with the same careful attention she had given it for years. Through the window, she could see other cadets in the training yards, and several were practicing with primitive projectile weapons requisitioned from Academy armories. They were clumsy and awkward, but they were trying to understand. That was enough. The rifle reassembled and secured, Maya retrieved her personal tablet and composed a message home. She described the past day's events, the demonstration, the reactions, and the changes she saw beginning. She told her family that humanity was earning respect not by pretending to be like other species, but by being authentically themselves before sleeping. She stood at the window and located Earth's star among the thousands visible in Arcos Prime's night sky. It was a small yellow point indistinguishable from countless others, but it was home. It was where humans had learned patience hunting across savannas, precision striking game from distances that tested physical and mental limits, and determination that allowed them to persist when larger, stronger, faster species would have surrendered. Those lessons, learned across millions of years of evolution and thousands of years of civilization, had come with humanity to the stars. And now, the galaxy was learning that sometimes the most advanced weapon was the one that required no power source except human will, no targeting computer except human calculation, and no sensor network except human patience. Maya smiled at the distant star and whispered to it, "We are here. We belong, and we will never stop being human, no matter how far from home we travel." In the morning, there would be new training, new challenges, and new opportunities to learn from the dozens of species that called the Academy home. But tonight, she was simply Maya-chan, human, carrying forward a tradition of marksmanship and patience that stretched back to ancestors who had once hunted with sharpened stones and wooden spears. The technology had changed. The principles had not. And that she understood now was humanity's greatest strength, the ability to take fundamental truths and apply them across any context. Whether hunting antelope on African plains or defending coalition, interests among the stars, the rifle on her bunk gleamed in the moonlight. Primitive and powerful, ancient and effective. It was not the weapon of the future. It was the weapon of all time, refined across ages by a species that had learned that patience. Precision and understanding of fundamentals would always matter. No matter how advanced the galaxy became, tomorrow she would teach others what humanity knew. Tonight, she simply rested, secure in the knowledge that Earth's children had earned their place among the stars, not by abandoning what made them human, but by embracing it completely.